And it's brought to you by guess who, John? Tito's Handmade Vodka. We talked about the other day, if something were to happen to Carson, get ready, Nick Foles, your phone's going to ring. That was on Thursday's podcast. Then Friday, it turns out Carson Wentz is hurt. The headline I saw today, which I guess you would say is a positive, but if you're talking like this, it's not positive, is Carson Wentz will rest in rehab before determining if foot surgery is necessary. Holy smokes, John. This is a disaster for the Colts. And it has made, we can talk about that in and of itself, but part of this is Jimmy an option for them, Garoppolo. But let's start with Carson. This is crazy.
Yeah, I saw that Jeff Schwartz had a great tweet. He said, this feels like the Tommy John pitcher thing. Like, I'm just going to give it a couple weeks off on the elbow. And then like a month later, it's like, oh, he's getting Tommy John. Like, I just, how does he not end up getting surgery? You know, it's a disaster for his career. But I truly believe Chris Ballard's one of the better GMs in the league. He didn't have many options, right? He didn't know. I think maybe if he would have liked Justin Fields, I don't know if he did, maybe he would have just stood pat and traded up to get him. But you didn't know that, in middle of March, right? It felt like all these quarterbacks were going to go really high. He had to make a move. If Carson Wentz never plays it down for him, which I think would be on the table, definitely this season, who knows? I mean, I don't know if he would just get rid of him after this year, but it would be a problem for them if Carson Wentz is just like has a terrible foot injury and just let's just say worst case does not play a snap. Would you say Carson Wentz would be on the Colts next year if he does not play a snap for them this season?
Depends if they like him. I think it's possible, depending on who replaces him and if they like him.
Yeah.
Because they gave up a third and a conditional second. So, I think that probably makes you feel like you can kind of operate at your own speed. You don't have to do anything. Could have been worse.
That's my point. That they were lucky, and part of this is it was just a perfect storm, that his stock was so poor that they could pivot if they just got to get off, right? They did not give up 2 1s and a 2. Like if Jamal Adams or Jalen Ramsey or Khalil Mack, one of those picks or one of those trades had been a disaster, those teams were screwed, right? Aren't the Texans a good example? Like they traded all this for Laramie Tunsil and then it blows up and they're screwed. They lose the number 3 overall pick.
Yeah.
That I would say this year, what are the chances if they would have had that pick, Deshaun Watson things going on, don't you think they just draft a quarterback, right? Maybe they take Trey Lance?
Yeah, do they? I mean, maybe they take Trey Lance. Maybe remember, they liked him.
Who?
Trey Lance, the Colts.
No. I meant the Texans.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, maybe
I'm just saying.
But the Colts did like him. Remember the video board? I mean, the photo of the board behind Ballard where they put like, what do they call it? Like the stake in the ground guys, or
yeah,
the guys
something
they
like
believe
that.
in.
Like
Blue collar.
He's got the blue horseshoe next to his name. Only 2 guys had it.
I put my blue collar on him, John. Yeah, I don't think the Colts are screwed for like trying to win football games. They are going to have at least some flexibility in ways that you don't if you trade a bunch of number 1 picks for them or if you paid them, But
could they get Phillip to hang up the whistle and come back?
it was funny when the thing happened. I said, well, we were talking about Foles yesterday. It makes so much sense. Nick is not even the backup quarterback in Chicago. We know the Colts tried to get him or were interested in him at least the year that he left the Jags and went to the Bears. Frank Reich and him are tight. But then someone else said that, like, well, would it make more sense to go get Phillip? Phillip might be a better player. So
who would you rather have week 1?
I'd try to go get Phillip.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah. But that may not be an option. And so the thing we were joking about on Thursday, watch Nick Foles.
Do you think he'd leave the kids? Because I don't know if he would now that he's kind of all in.
It depends. Maybe he's coaching the kids and it's like, this is not doing it for me.
Yeah. He's like, have you seen Billy throw? Like, I can't win with this guy.
So I don't know. I mean, I would try that because it's the fastest thing. But Nick also knows the offense. Foles is going to parlay this into another $8 million.
What if Phillip showed up? He was like 270.
It's not like mobility is a big part of his game anyway.
No.
But I can't imagine Wentz when he sees if Foles walks back to that locker room, Wentz's face when he sees him. But they need something because I said this when they drafted him. I did not think Jacob Eason was a guy that was going to be ready to play. He's not. And neither is Sam Ehlinger. Like, this team is trying to win right now. That they don't have the quarterback to do that if Wentz can't play. And then on top of that, like, even if Wentz, you kind of got to do something anyway. It's just already off to a bad start. So a lot of people have responded when that happened to, what about Jimmy Garoppolo? Doesn't seem like an option for the Colts. And I don't, right? You'd love for it to become an option for the Niners. It's too early to make that determination, though, if you're San Francisco, isn't it?
Well, to me, there's two reasons why it's not an option. One, Jimmy makes $20 million. So just right off the bat, you're paying Carson 35 plus, right? He makes an enormous amount of money. That was part of the thing why a lot of teams weren't that interested. They're like, well, I don't even know if he's any good. And he makes like him and Jared Goff make enormous money. They had no problem. They had a bunch of cap space, and they're like, we'll take the risk. We didn't pay that much. Now I'm going to get Jimmy Garoppolo, who won. So my two quarterbacks account for like $55 million. Jimmy, like Carson, gets hurt a lot too. Did you see they asked Jimmy, I know you watched, because I think Trent must have mentioned this like last week. He's like, you guys don't know. Jimmy was like a quarter millimeter away from snapping that thing. And Jimmy's like, yeah, we were close. Like, snapping his ankle last year. But part of it is like, yeah, he couldn't play because he had this bad ankle injury, because he's also torn his ACL and he's hurt his shoulder. Like, Jimmy has some parallels with Carson, wouldn't you say, of just a guy that at any moment, like, for as sad as it was, and I do believe it was sad. Like, I'm rooting for Carson Wentz to resurrect his career because I want to watch the Colts and have them be interesting.
He's fun to watch, and they're fun to watch.
It was for as like, it's always a wow when a guy has an injury, but then was it really that wow? Like Carson Wentz got hurt? Because I think a lot of people are like, yeah, the guy gets injured. Like if Jimmy were to get hurt, is it really that shocking? Like some guys just get hurt more than others.
No, and that's for all the time we're going to spend talking about, does Jimmy look better than Trey Lance? Is Trey Lance gaining on him? Aside from a Colts conversation, there is also just that, which is, it may come to a point where Kyle Shanahan doesn't get to make a decision. The decision gets made for him. Now, if you're in the Colts' shoes, you have a lot of not great options, right?
You're kind of screwed.
I was telling you I was watching the movie Argo the other day with Affleck, where there's some Iranian hostages, and he works for the CIA, and he's got to go get them out. And what's the actor's name?
Were you Cranston, Bryan Cranston?
Yeah, Bryan Cranston.
Were you inspired to watch an Affleck movie after seeing that he's gotten back with J-Lo?
No, that wasn't it, but I'm fired up for him.
Yeah,
I was just stuck on a plane
place.
Going through the United Airlines options, and Argo was on. And they've got all these terrible ideas of how to extract these hostages. I guess they're not really hostages yet. They're just hiding out in Iran. And they're like, oh, we'll get them some bikes, and they can ride 300 miles to the border in the winter. And they had all these bad ideas. And the head of the CIA was like, is this the best idea you have? And Cranston's like, I assure you, sir, this is the best bad idea we have by far. So these options here, when your $35 million quarterback gets hurt in August, like there are no good options. There's just bad options and less bad options. Because Foles gets hurt a lot. Who knows what Phillips' physical condition is? Maybe you could trade back for Jacoby Brissett. I don't know. But, if you draft a quarterback to be kind of ready and he ain't ready, what are your options?
Well, I was watching, I was flipping around the channels like on Friday night, and they must have been replaying Training Camp Live. I had forgotten. I mean, I don't even know if I knew. Maybe I'd seen it on the ticker like during free agency, but it was not in my brain. Jacoby Brissett is on the Dolphins.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking like, well, if Tua sucks, maybe they're thinking we got a guy that might just be able to play, right? Because we might have a team that's a playoff level team. If Tua just stinks, at least we just get a guy who maybe just can just get us going, right? Like when I saw Jacoby Brissett was on their team, I didn't think like he ain't playing.
Remember, because how much did they pay him? They gave him a good chunk of change.
Probably $8 million, I bet, because Tua doesn't make any money. Like I don't think they would trade him back unless they would be willing to like give a ton of money, or a huge draft pick, which you cannot do. You're right; they're just kind of screwed.
How about Marcus Mariota?
I think Jimmy would be way down. I don't hate that.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah, I don't hate that.
2-2s? Gruden like, let's see here, Chris.
I mean, a third. But if you're Gruden, you're like, well, is getting a third round pick for if Derek were to go down, a guy that we think we can compete with. Who doesn't make any money. I don't want to give this guy up.
Yeah.
Can you just be given a 2 though when you were already kind of in with Wentz? You're kind of like doubling down on your investment, right? That's already not working.
You probably can't, but it depends. Like if he's got to have season-ending surgery, you were prepared to give up a 2 anyway because you had a conditional second attached to Carson. So
you technically don't have a 2 to give unless Carson plays.
Carson's got to be out because that's earmarked.
Yeah.
So on YouTube, I had a friend that went to UW. Apparently, Easton's inconsistent, and that was in college. Yes, I'm telling you, he's great. He had great tape against BYU. Had to make some big throws, but they can't rely on him. So
I mean, when I watched him play, I just thought he wasn't a very good quarterback. Like he just didn't have the instincts to play the position.
And we went to the fourth. He's physically, he's huge. Got a big arm. Might have been a top 10 pick 20 years ago based on physicality. But what did he end up in the fourth round? I think.
Yeah, which I even thought was high.
Yeah,
like,
I
bet a lot of teams would not have drafted him.
So
he was to me, he felt like a guy that draftable player, right? Where a lot of teams would be like, listen, I'm not saying he won't get drafted. We just would not pick him. Like that would have been my stance in my draft room. If Haber Middlecoff had a draft, I'd be like, listen, I'm acknowledging someone is going to draft this guy. He's just not on my draft board.
Yeah, but I don't think he'd be your starting quarterback. And so you draft him in a year where you've got a starter and when you've got a backup. But now you don't have any of that, and now he's the guy taking first-team snaps.